The doctor will see you now, Nightlings. Welcome to episode 32 of the Horror Headquarters. If you're new here, welcome in. I hope you enjoy this episode and all that's involved in it. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. Overall, I'm very excited that you guys are all here listening, and tonight's episode is going to be a very creepy one. It's going to be on a serial killer, one of the most prolific serial killers, one that's surrounded with so many mysteries and secrets and unknown answers till this day. The serial killer in question, Harold Shipman, also known as Dr. Death. Harold Shipman was born on January 14, 1946, in Nottingham, England. He excelled pretty well in high school and was said to be a bright and ambitious student. His interest in medicine emerged during his youth, and he pursued a career in healthcare. Now, before I get into his career, I want to tell you about how his mother died. Now, it's said that his mother had lung cancer before death, but then there's a bunch of people saying that she had no cancer, but that she had a heart attack because she was administered a dose of morphine and later on passed away. Now, they say that this is one of the reasons why he became a serial killer, and there are a bunch of theories that he himself ended up killing his own mother and blamed it on the doctor. There's so much detail and there's so much theories about this specific thing, and the reason I say to remember this is because later on he becomes very keen with morphine and a bunch of toxicants that can kill you. And this is what caused him to become a serial killer. Now, these are some theories. He never actually stated why, and I'll get into that later. After he graduated from the Leeds School of Medicine, he took his first position as the general practitioner at the Abraham Medical Center in Todmorden. The following year, he was caught forging prescriptions of pethidine, in which he states was for his own use. He ended up pleading guilty and was fined $600 and was put in a drug rehabilitation clinic. Now, he was actually released in quite a short time, and a lot of people say maybe a little bit too short, because allegedly the doctors had said that he was totally cured. So he went back to working as a general practitioner at Donnybrook Medical Center in Hyde, which is where Manchester is located. Now, he continued working here throughout the 1980s, and he made his own surgery at 21 Market Street in 1993, and he became very respected by the community. Everyone in the community loved this man. They really appreciated him. They always went to him for any issues they had, and especially very elderly women and old people would go to get his services. But this ended up being their own undoing, because Shipman typically targeted elderly patients, many of whom were actually in good health, and he would visit their homes under the idea of providing medical care, and then he would administer lethal doses of drugs, often morphine, claiming they needed pain relief or other medications. And then he would falsify medical records to suggest natural causes for their deaths. For example, he would say that they passed away in their sleep or they had a heart attack, but there were so many people that denied that he had anything involved, and he was constantly doing this over and over and over again. Now, you'd figure after a couple of deaths that there would be some suspicion, but Shipman's crimes went undetected for many years because he was a trusted figure in the community and people praised him and loved him, and so there weren't no immediate suspicions raised about the death of his patients. And many of the victims were elderly and had pre-existing medical conditions, so this allowed Shipman to cover up his actions so much better. This guy was such a genius in a way because he was intelligent enough to hack the system, and it just instills this fear, especially in me right now, because you really put so much trust in doctors of taking care of you, of prescribing you the correct medication, but one wrong step or one step that they intend to do could literally end your life forever. And I'm not saying all doctors are bad in that way, but you just never know. You put so much trust in these people, but one wrong thing and your life is over and there's no turning back. And of course, there was the manipulation of the records, because he was able to make it appear as though the deaths were due to natural causes, and his position as a doctor also provided him with access to prescription drugs, which he used to administer lethal doses to his victims. So, being a doctor, that's the easiest way to be a serial killer. That's what so many people say, and even people during the time when this was broadcasted, when he started getting out more in the public and their suspicion started to grow, people realized, wow, a career in medicine really is the best way to be a serial killer. And at the time, there were very few safeguards and oversight mechanisms in place to monitor the activities of healthcare professionals like Shipman. And this also allowed him to operate without attracting suspicion for an extended period of time. And again, the community that he was in absolutely adored this guy. They trusted him implicitly. This made it less likely for family members or even colleagues to question his actions because of how good of a doctor he was and how much people loved and praised him. But you really never know. And it wasn't until 1998 when a local undertaker raised concerns about the high number of cremation forms signed by Shipman that authorities eventually started to investigate his activities. And this specific inquiry revealed a pattern of suspicious deaths linked to Shipman, leading to his arrest and eventual conviction. But there was also another event that caused him to catapult into the public eye, causing the media and the community to absolutely explode. Now, this piece of data literally sends chills down my spine, and learning about it is so creepy. And I believe it'll have that same energy across for you guys, but I'm just gonna dive right into it. So, Harold Shipman's last known victim was someone by the name of Kathleen Grundy, who was an elderly woman who lived in Hyde, Manchester, where he practiced as a doctor. She was 81 and she died on June 24th, 1998. Now keep that date in mind. Shipman actually visited her home earlier that day and he signed her death certificate, attributing her to death to old age. But Grundy's daughter, Angela Woodruff, became suspicious of the circumstances surrounding her mother's death because of this detail. Her mother altered her will and left Shipman a significant inheritance. This caused her to freak out and she contacted authorities immediately, which prompted an investigation into Grundy's death. After a forensics examination of Grundy's body, they found traces of diamorphine, which is heroin, that led to Shipman's arrest on September 7th, 1998. So this investigation took around about 2.5 months until he was arrested. And other investigations ended up leading to a pattern of suspicious deaths linked to Shipman, which later uncovered all the different murders that he had committed with giving people doses. Now, remember the story I told you in the beginning of how his mother allegedly died? It is said that she died from lung cancer and a heart attack. But don't forget, she was administered morphine right before she passed, and Shipman witnessed this whole thing. He saw it happening. But this is why there's a theory that he was involved in her death. Hence, the reason why he became a serial killer. I personally believe in this theory because it's really hard to see or to even imagine how a serial killer can just click. You know what I mean? Like they have their moment where they realize they're one, or they don't even think they're one, excuse me. A lot of people think they're doing the world a favor, but I do think that his mother's death, being that she was also elderly, and being that he killed mostly elderly women, being that he also administered high doses of really toxic substances into people's bodies, fatal doses, lethal doses into people's bodies, all the dots connect for me. But you would be surprised. When he was arrested, he pleaded not guilty all the way until the end of his case. Even when he was in prison, he said he didn't do any of it. That is a different level of psychotic than most people. And also, I have watched videos of his interrogation of the case, of people discussing how he behaved. He was completely unfazed. He didn't show any signs of stress, of nervousness, of even a guilty conscience. He was completely cool as a cucumber the whole time. And I say that because it's so psychotic, and it just shows you how complex the mind is and how insane this person was, to not even be scared at all of death, to not be scared of doing all this stuff to people, to not have a heart, not to show any emotion. Even through his trials, he kept saying that he didn't do any of it. That is just mind-boggling to me. The fact that he had those acting skills that he obviously intensely trained and practiced for, because I'm sure that he was aware that he would probably get caught one day. So the fact that he was able to completely stay at a normal level, no high heart rates, none of that, no sweating, no nervousness, that is just insane, and it just shows how complex serial killers really are. And it really made me think about what goes inside the mind of these people, because obviously I have taken a bunch of classes in psychology, and for someone to get that numb to every single thing, even giving these doses to over 200 people and not batting an eye or showing any signs of guilty conscience, that is extremely difficult. It obviously has to do with a bunch of different topics and a bunch of different details, but I personally think it has to do with the way he was raised, especially losing his mother at such a young age and seeing everything take place. I think that he felt, in a way, called to do all these things because he didn't want anyone else to know the love of elderly women, to know the love of a grandmother or a mother, because he lost that at a young age. So he basically wanted other people to suffer for the things that he went through. Now, that's just my personal 2 cents, but I have watched videos of this investigation, as I've said, and even one investigator that worked on his case said that he did not display any notable signs of physical movement or agitation that would suggest guilt or nervousness. Instead, he consistently denied any involvement in the murders of his patients and remained composed during questioning and court appearances. In short, this guy was crazy. This guy was psychotic. This guy was not human. And I think it's all these, especially along with a bunch of other stuff as well, that got me so into true crime and horror. Because being able to examine someone's brain, learn about how they react and behave during a questioning, how they were raised as a kid, the things they were exposed to, anything they were involved in high school, any signs of disconformity that they experienced or went through, just all these different aspects all together. But there could be completely other aspects of it, because something else that really terrifies me about him is that he did not provide a clear explanation for his actions or admit to his crimes, and throughout the investigation and trial, he maintained his innocence, denied any involvement in the murders, and he refused to confess or provide insight into his motives, which left many questions unanswered, contributing to the overall mystery surrounding this case, because there's just so much that we don't know, and unfortunately, we won't know, because something happened on January 13th, 2004. At 6:20 a.m. on January 13th, 2004, Shipman hanged himself in his cell, and he was pronounced dead at 8:10 a.m. He was 57 years old, and it was a day before his 58th birthday. Now, a statement indicated that he hanged himself from the window bars of his cell using his bed sheets. His body was then taken to have an examination done, and they eventually released his body to the family after an inquest was opened and adjourned shortly after. Now, if you guys don't know what an inquest is, it's basically a judicial inquiry that is held to determine the cause of a person's death, and it was suicide. That's what the examination stated. Now, his death, you think, would be a celebratory time, but it was actually a very bad and depressing time for the families, the victims' families, because they said that they felt cheated, as Shipman's suicide meant they would never have the satisfaction of a confession nor answers as to why he committed his crimes. Now, this sparked controversy amongst multiple national newspapers, with the Daily Mirror saying that he was a cold coward and condemning the prison service for allowing his suicide to happen, while The Sun, which is another national newspaper, ran a celebratory front page headline titled Ship, Ship, Hooray. The Independent called for the inquiry into Shipman's suicide to look more widely at the state of United Kingdom prisons as well as the welfare of inmates. Another newspaper called The Guardian said that the whole life sentencing should be replaced by indefinite sentencing, for this would at least give prisoners the hope of eventual release and reduce the risk of their ending their own lives by suicide, as well as making their management easier for prison officials. Now, his motive for suicide was never established, though he reportedly told his probation officer that he was considering suicide to assure his wife's financial security after he was stripped of his National Health Service pension. Now, once you turn 60, that goes away, and hence why they also think that this is a possible cause as to why he committed suicide. But my question is, if he reportedly told the probation officer this, why didn't the probation officer say anything? It's mysterious. This is why I say there's so many questions and unknown things about this case, especially about how many more lives he could have possibly taken. This honestly reminds me a lot of the episode I did on Benjamin Franklin. Now, if you guys haven't listened to that episode, go listen to it because this episode reminds me a lot of this one right now. And it's kind of crazy the connections they have. I mean, obviously they differ in a lot of ways, but at the same time, they are very similar. Now, there's one more detail that I need to go over, and it's especially very creepy because I've just discovered it while recording this episode. And just for reference, today, like the day I'm recording this episode, it's March 19th, 2024. This episode is going to be released on March 20th, 2024, Eastern Standard Time at midnight. This is creepy. This is very creepy when you guys find out what this next detail is. I'm gonna try to keep my composure as much as possible. But after his body was released to his family, it remained in Sheffield for more than a year despite multiple false reports about his funeral. They never ended up having a funeral for him, and his widow was advised by police against burying her husband in case the grave ended up getting attacked by the victims' families. Now, Shipman was eventually cremated on March 19th, 2005. Now, I swear on my life, I did not know this when recording this episode. I swear. This is so creepy, and you guys can say it's a coincidence all you want. Like, I'm stuttering over my words because of how creeped out I am. You guys can say it's a coincidence all you want. It is not a coincidence. This shit happened for a reason. I am so creeped out right now. March 19th, he was cremated. Today's March 19th. What are the chances? What are the chances? You guys say you don't believe in this shit. You better believe in it now. My god. But yeah, that was the end of his story. And as I said, there's so many unanswered questions and people that are still investigating his case and all the murders that he committed and why. Now that concludes episode 32 of the Horror Headquarters. Now, I definitely ended this episode in a very unsettling way, and I'm hoping I keep you guys up at night with that last fact that I gave. But thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate your guys' support. I really, really, really do. I really enjoy this. I mean, to anyone listening for the first time, I love doing this. This is my favorite thing in the world. This keeps me going every single day. Just being able to record episodes about horror, about true crime, about anything horror related. It just makes me so happy because I truly have found my people. I truly have found people that will listen to the craziness that I talk about, even though I consider it not crazy. But you know what? To each their own. But I really enjoy your guys' support. And please make sure, if you guys are a new listener, to hit that follow button and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every single podcast platform out there. We are on YouTube as well because Google Podcasts is going away. That is a big, big, big announcement that I want to make sure you guys know. Google Podcasts is going away, so make sure you guys start listening on YouTube if you do not have Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any other streaming platform. I am working on the t-shirts. I promise. They are still a work in progress. I just want to make them as perfect as possible, and I want the process to be as smoothly as possible as well. Hence why it's taking so long. But also follow us on all our social media. Instagram at The Horror Headquarters, Twitter at The Horror HQ, TikTok at The Horror Headquarters, and on YouTube, which is also The Horror Headquarters. But we're all over there. We're also on Facebook as well now, The Horror Headquarters. Just search us up. You'll find a page dedicated to the podcast. But, that's it. I'm going to go stream Ariana Grande's album, Eternal Sunshine, which is literally the best album of this lifetime. It's so good. I'm sorry. Shameless plug, even though I'm not getting paid for that. But it's just so amazing. You guys have to listen to it if you haven't yet. But until next time, tread very lightly and pray for forgiveness. Midnight hour is approaching with a needle.